Now, I've been riding a mountain bike for many years, and I've been doing an event in the Mashata Game Reserve where most of the action of the book takes place. I became friends with the general manager there, Dave Evans, who's also a mountain biker, and he told me the story about this amazing horse that had worked as a safari horse at Limpopo Valley Horse Safaris. 2000 was the biggest rainfall event ever recorded in Southern African history. Cyclone, not the Moina, no. Cyclone Leon Elon, no? Leon, Elin. And the horses had to be set free because the banks of the river were rising. The horse ran away with all the other horses, and some of them never came back. Zulu was thought dead or stolen, and 4 years later they found Zulu, and of course this is the kernel of the story, running as the alpha stallion of a wild herd of zebras. So Dave told me the story and said, well, Bristow, you're a writer, write the goddamn story. Yeah, I'm a writer, but I'm not a horse rider. And I felt that it was a story that had to appeal to horse people. And although I can ride a horse, I don't ride horses. So I found somebody who does, or did, and she took on the project. And a year later, dumped all the notes on me and said, I can't do this anymore. I didn't ask her why, but I felt obliged to take on the project. So I started, sort of in my spare time, going back, and I discovered that while I was at Getaway Magazine, I'd been on safari to Mashatu. I knew that. What I didn't know was that Zulu had been on safari with me. But he wasn't a special horse at the time, just a black stallion, a Boer pet, very, very mild-mannered. But it was a very, very different horse that came back after 4 years in the wild. Extraordinarily so, probably uniquely so in the whole world. And I don't want to go too much into it, but Zulu learned survival stuff, real African survival stuff, that knowledge he passed on to the horses at Limpopo Valley, as well as to the horse safari people who use some of that knowledge still today. And I won't go into any more detail about that, but so yeah, because of Dave Evans hounding me, the story followed me. And as I got deeper and deeper into the story, it evolved into a much, much deeper narrative than the story about a lost horse. So if I don't remember to say it at the end, I'd like to say now that it's not a story about a horse, it's a story about Africa. And if there's anything that could be a modern day version of Jock of the Bushveld, this is as close as you're going to find. It's about the bush, the dust, the rain, what rain means in Botswana, in the Limpopo Valley. Anybody who's been there will understand. Pula in Tswana means blood as well as rain. It's the blood of the earth. And that's the world that Zulu lived in. So yeah, the story followed me. And as I got more and more into it, it grew on me and obsessed me. It took me about 3 years to write the book. And that was the easy part.
Easy part was writing it. How many rejection slips did you get?
Yeah, I'm a pretty persistent person. 174. Took a long time. It took a lot of ego to bury in a dark suitcase. The 175th one was in some ways the most interesting. It was a publisher in London, Olympia Publishers, and I lost a lot of money on that little venture by signing the contract through the jubilation of getting an acceptance. Turns out they had a publishing model that made you put up a marketing fee, and they never really came to the party, and I had to buy my way out of that contract. So those 174 were all overseas, agents and publishers in America and England. I thought it had an international appeal, a story about a horse in Africa. I mean, come on, but apparently not. So then I went to South African publishers, and I published, as somebody said, a couple of books about Africa, and I thought it would be a shoo-in. Penguin Random House, biggest publisher in Africa, said, are there any pictures when the horse was running wild? I said, no, nobody knew. They said, no, we're not interested. So I took it to Jonathan Ball, who I had an arrangement with. They said, we want it more like Warhorse. So I went and I read Warhorse. It's a children's book. The movie's very emotional, but it's a black beauty, and that wasn't the story I wanted to tell. So I went to Tafelberg. Well, 10 emails later, I'm still waiting for a response. So it wasn't easy. Then eventually, with humble pie, I went to Tucana Media because I had screwed up a project with them a little while earlier, and I was too embarrassed to go back to them, and they looked at me and said, this is a fantastic story, where do we start? So that was the 179th And it was a yes. It was my last chance. So if you want to write a book, just remember, dogged determination.
When the book was launched in Mshatu, late last year, a group of us were taken up. And what happened that particular night, and I wanted to try and replicate it this evening, is that David stood out on the middle of a plain with an old tree stump, which is where he balanced his glass of whatever he was drinking. And then as he got to a particular point in the story that he was reading from the book, a group of horses came out of the sunset, and they were Zulu's stablemates, or offspring of stablemates. It was truly one of the best book launches I have ever attended. Now, David, you're unaware of what's about to happen. We did get 2 of those horses this evening. Unfortunately, we're upstairs and they can't do stairs. So when you leave this evening, the horses are pooping downstairs as we speak because they're scared to come up. No, I'm only kidding. But it was truly an awesome launch. Now, David mentioned 174 rejection slips, but that's not what it's all about, because you did how many rewrites?
4.
Now, 4 complete rewrites, and it's not a sort of a 2-page book. And I think David would admit that you get precious about your words, and then a publisher comes along and said, yes, it's very nice, but we need you to change them. So what is your mindset then?
I was chatting to other DB downstairs before the event this evening, and he asked me, do I go into bookstores and try to push my book into a more favourable position and maybe throw other ones down on the floor? And the answer is no, I don't. I used to do that, and even though I've got, sometimes I'm told, an overbearing personality, can't see it myself, but I don't project my ego onto my writing. I really don't. I do a lot of marketing effort, like tonight, and all around South Africa, and I put a lot of effort into that, and trying to, the hardest job is to get the book into the bookstore. Once you're there, you don't have to do too much more yourself. So no, I don't go pushing my book. And the same with writing the book. I've got an incredible, any writer, any creative person is the most hard on themselves. It's self-judgment, and I'm not like that. But I've asked, when I was writing the book, I asked horse people and word people to read the manuscript, and all of them suggested changes, and I made them. I first wrote Zulu to appeal to, well, who's a horse book going to appeal to? Teenage girls. So I wrote the book for teenage girls. And it was a good manuscript. And I changed it, and I changed it again. When I finally got to Jakarta, they looked at the manuscript and said, look, it's a great story, but just one thing, we don't want talking horses here. No talking horses. Which meant that I had to rewrite the entire manuscript, because I'd written it with a horse, not so much talks, but thinks. So the horse Zulu was interpreting the landscape. What should I do? What's happening here? And I completely rewrote it with the horse becoming a third-person character, not a first or second-person character. So there was no ego attached to that. Each time it improved the story, it got tighter, and the final thing that Jakarta told me was cut 20,000 words. Now, that's a couple of months of my time. Sure. I'll do it, no problem. If it's going to make it better and tighter, I did it. And so the long way of answering the question is, when you want to produce something that your heart's in, don't get too sucked up in your own mindset about what it is. Just hone it. It's a piece of wood. Take the plane and the chisel and the sandpaper, and never stop until it's just beautifully right. I can't say I'm a beautiful writer, but I worked hard on it, and I think the manuscript is a mature one because of that.
That does explain, pardon me, that does explain that you just told me you had to cut 20,000 words. There are no ifs, ands, or buts in the book at all. So I think what David did was just went through the book and thought, okay, we'll just take all of those out. Or, because then people will think you're writing in what do you call it, SMS text. You know, that's how modern people read nowadays. You don't need any of that stuff. And you also don't need any vowels. You can get away with those as well. But now, you say you're not ego-driven. and I don't know you that way. However, how much of you is in this version of Zulu? How much of you is in the horse?
No, I'd say nothing. My knowledge is in the book because I speak about what would have the horse walking in the veld have experienced coming out of a safari scenario where he's fed and watered and groomed every day, looked after, to being on his own. Now, horses are herd animals, incredibly nervous by nature. And the biggest killer of horses, domestic horses, is colic, which is kind of like the equivalent of lower back pain to humans. We don't know what the hell causes it, but it's always there. So I try to imagine the horse walking through the Mashatu bush. What would he be seen and heard? And he started getting attuned to things that are much more sensitively, like the alarm calls of birds. Now, being on safari, and a good ranger will know the difference between a red-billed Franklin and a Cape spurfowl. And what the alarm call is, and there's often a duet between male and female calling in the bush, answer and reply, owls as well. So that most of the danger calls firstly, because there's a snake, a leopard, or whatever, and then once they've dispersed, they come together calls. It's a different call. So it's in the book. That's what the horse would have experienced. On many levels, there's let me say that word again, geological information, there's environmental information, there's predator-prey information. That's why I say it's an African book, about a horse walking through Africa, checking out the elephants and the mongols and the lions and the hyenas.
If only it did have a camera, a GoPro attached for those 4 years. You mentioned earlier that when Zulu was recaptured, and he was, after the 4 years, he was a totally different horse, because now he was predator savvy. The other interesting thing is that he didn't fall prey to African horse sickness. Now, did that help African horse research at all, David?
I spent a bit of time at Onderstepoort Veterinary Institute, where Zulu had been a working horse prior to becoming a safari horse, and spoke to the professor of equine research there. And I spoke to him before I learned about the African horse sickness from the safari guides at Mashatu. So I didn't ask all the right questions. I was asking more questions about the biological evolution of equids in Africa and the co-evolution with African horse sickness and how that could affect horse, blah, 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 blah. It's all in the book. But what I discovered from the two people who had been closest to Zulu at Mashatu was that, firstly, he never succumbed to African horse sickness, which is a scourge of horses in the tropics, and neither do zebras. So there's some co-evolution with zebras and African horse sickness, and I don't know how much of the story to tell you, but basically Zulu found the not cure or antidote, but medication, preventative medication, through associating with zebras, which brought me onto the subject of muti, the whole African subject of muti, from Sangoma muti to animal muti, that chimpanzees use muti. Your cats and your dogs use muti when they've got a bad stomach. Emetics are the main African muti. There's even a tree called Trichelia emetica, the Natal mahogany, that is used very widely in Africa for its emetic properties, because bad food and crap in your system is the main cause of illness, dysentery in Africa. So you either throw it up or you poop it out, and you take bark to do that. Well, the animals do the same. Cats and dogs do it with grass, where they heave up, and you have a nice little plop on your dining carpet. That's muti. Parrots do it because parrots eat a lot of nuts and fruits that have got alkaloid poisons, and to neutralize them, they've got favorite clay sites along riverbanks, and they eat clay. So Zulu learned from zebra muti, and he passed some of that knowledge on to the Popo Valley horse safaris, and they use it today. More than that I won't tell you, but it's an incredible story.
No, spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear how the book ends, please close your ears now. They end. Just on that note, David, did you get to a point in the story, in the narrative, when you could say the end? And how is it for an author when you get to that particular point? Is it like, and I suppose maybe for ladies once a baby's been born, now that's all down and dusted and you can move on, maybe. I'm trying not to be sexist here. But for you, you gave birth to a book. How do you then let it go?
When my children ask me a question, which they know now not to, I say, do you want the short, the medium, or the long answer? Dad! So there are the short, medium, and long answers, but I knew the end of the story before I started writing, so it was quite easy. I won't tell you what it is. The cycle of life goes round. There was a possibility of a sequel, but I killed that idea quite soon. But what I think I've managed to do is I've got a bigger vision for this book. I've been collecting books on my computer for 20 years. I've got 10 books close to finished. So the politics of this book is that it'll lead me easily into the next one. And I've got the last chapter of the next one to write. I had it on the plane with me, but I forgot my flash drive, so I couldn't load the file into my computer and finish it. It's about Helen Martins. It's a story about 20 unique, maverick Southern Africans, starting with Klatoa, the Khoi maiden, about 14 years old, who ended up working for the Van Riebeeks in the castle, married a Swedish doctor, had 3 children by him. He died on a slaving expedition to Madagascar. She hit the bottle, became a complete drunk, died an alcoholic on Robben Island. Who knew that? Non Kumbawuse, the Xhosa seer, the 14-year-old girl who saw the vision in the pool at the near Wavecrest, in fact, Trenery's Hotel, told her people to kill all their cattle and burn their crops, and all the spirits of the ancestors would rise and drive the white people into the sea. Now, why did the Xhosa people whose spiritual and material wealth is in cattle listen to this 14-year-old? Well, that's the story. And I've got 18 other stories like that. So that'll be my next book. And I've got at least 3 or 4 near completion, hoping to follow. And I just hope they're all great stories. The one after the people is going to be about places in South Africa that you think you know, but you probably don't really know. Like, I'll just give you one example. The Huron Logement is a cave up the west coast of the Cape. And on it are the inscribed names of Simon van der Stel, Olaf Berg, Francois Le Vaillant, Thomas Geddes Baines. All the travellers who ever travelled from Cape Town went via the Huron Logement and wrote their names on the cave wall. Who's ever been there? So I've got 20 places like that to tell stories about. And 2 more after that. So.
All right, before I hand over to David wants to read a portion of the book, and it's a piece in the book that I find rather interesting. But first we have a giveaway. Now I did mention all the people from Bryanston High or Bryanston Primary. Bryanston Primary. Purely primary. So if you were in the high school, sorry for you. Okay. Sorry? All right, I'd like to know, and it's, don't shout out, put a hand up. Who was the deputy headmaster? Lady at the back. Would you like to call a friend? No?
Close. No,
No?
yeah,
No,
you're right. You're right.
You gave me.
I got it wrong. It was yours. I said your bear and I got it wrong. It was your dog.
There's a book for you.
Just one book. For the book you didn't win, for the title.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. Now, David wanted to read a portion of the book. David, I've earmarked it here for you. There you go, in nice pink paper. So I think we'll round off with this, and then David will obviously stay and sign and chat and do all of those things. So, David, the mic is yours.
Before I read, I just want to thank you all for coming. It's fantastic to see. I left Joburg more than 30 years ago, so it's so lucky to see people I haven't seen for so long. Thank you for coming tonight. The piece I'm going to read to you is appeared in the first draft that was written for the teenage girl, the 12, maybe the 10-year-old girl even. And even today people ask me, is it okay for children? And I say, yeah, it's fine for children. Don't hide anything from children. They know more about sex than you know, let me tell you that, for a start. So, I had it in the first version, and it remains in the final version. As with so much in this book, it's not exactly how it happened, because I wasn't there. But this is a story told to me by somebody who was there, the person who owns Zulu, who is not entirely a nice character, but he told me the story and I just had to use it. But the chapter is called Lady Godiva. Senior guide Harvey, who had worked his way around the horse safari business, came up with the bright idea of appealing to young riders in the UK. So they sent out emissaries to Bucks, the British University and College Sports Equestrian Events Organisation, based at the Coventry University Equestrian Centre. Make a hit with them, he reckoned, and every young rider and their travel agent in the UK would be on board. It has been observed that people who work with horses, much like those who work with dogs, walkies, tend to be bossy at best, peculiar at worst, often both. So it did not cause untoward stir when Miss Bossyboots from Coventry Equestrian Centre arrived for a look-see. Typically, a safari company consists of up to 8 clients and 2 guides. Miss Coventry joined a mixed group of couples and singles, with Sparky, the former Australian stockman, as lead guide on Zulu, and Big Masejo, the guide in training riding backup rifle on Pongola. There was also the cook, Small Joe, who would in time become a lead guide as well as one of Botswana's top eventers. After a quick cup of coffee and rusks around the campfire, they set off at sunrise and rode towards Nell's Flag to watch a herd of elephants drinking. On the way, they passed a fallen apple leaf tree where a family of hyenas had set up a den in a hole beneath a root tangle. The carnivores were lying in the open, waiting for the sun to warm them, and they hardly stirred as the posse rode by. It was a great place to canter out in the open, and after 2 hours the riders were tiring. A halt was called around mid-morning, among a scatter of fallen leadwood logs surrounded by croton bushes. Guest riders were not nannied, but left to dismount on their own and tie up their horses where they could easily graze. Big Joe signalled to Sparky that one of the party was missing and pointed to a clump of croton bushes. Sparky walked Zulu slowly around the tall green bushes. He was just starting to worry when he came upon a site that would go down as one of the great legends of the Limpopo Valley. There was Paleface munching contentedly, while Miss Coventry lay stretched out on a log, boots on, jodhpurs unzipped, waistcoat, blouse and bra laid neatly across the trunk. When she saw him, she gave a snaggle-toothed leer and said, "What took you so long, soldier? Let's do what they do in the jungle." He tried to, but could not suppress a sharp laugh, which rather spoilt the moment. She really was not his type. But a lady does not like to be denied, naked and unrequited in the African wilderness. Without another word, she stood up with astonishing dexterity, dressed, untied a horse and cantered away while Sparky was left to bring up the rear. He knew he was in for trouble when he came across items of her clothing strewn on the ground. I'll leave it there.
David, thanks very much for sharing the book, sharing the story, and sharing your knowledge. I think you've whet the appetite of the audience here this evening for your next 3 books, certainly. And we look forward to reading those in the not-too-distant future. Thank you all for coming out. And the book is on sale, so please buy a copy. I'm sure David would sign it. And if he won't, I will on his behalf. And there are, I think, still some snacky things and wine to enjoy yourself. So thank you all for coming out, and I hope you've enjoyed the evening.
Thanks, Any questions, I suppose, would be the nice thing.
Any questions for David?
Yes. I noticed 2 stories you described in your future book talk about 14-year-old girls. Is that a pattern?
It's quite a pattern. It's quite a pattern.
David, you opened yourself to that one.
And 14-year-old girls in this book as well. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes. You had 179 rejections. Why didn't you self-publish yourself?
David?
It's not the road to fame.
Really?
There are a few exceptions. You know, there are a few exceptions to everything. The hardest thing about... Now, I had a saying all my life that it's easy to make books. It's like bread or bricks. You just pop them in the machine and pop them out. It's hard to sell them. Now, independent publishers or private publishers don't have access to the infrastructure that gets books into shops and sold. Not quite on the level of supermarkets, but the publishers own the shelf space to a degree. They've got the infrastructure, they've got the people to supply and stock, and to promote. If you, as an individual person, try to break into that, good luck. It's damn hard. It's been done, but not very often.
That's not a true story.
Well, it's part of the true story.
It's your version of the story.
That's your version of the story. I mean, we've got authors that make R1 million a year on Kindle downloads only, and they self-publish. So what are they doing right? In your opinion, what would they be doing right?
I think what they're doing right is writing in the right genre. There are genres that sell in the millions, and there are genres that don't. And if you want to write crap and sell millions, that's fine. I don't. That's how I feel about it. I've read a lot of those really bestsellers, and I just think it's drivel. It's just unbelievable human excrement of words on paper, in my opinion. And it's my opinion, and I'm wrong, because I'm only one amongst millions, but so be it.
So that's the reason you didn't self-publish.
Correct. I've got a bigger plan.
So you had a question.
Yes. When Zulu was found, was he more like a tame horse or more like a zebra?
No. Zulu grew up in a very normal household with children and then on a farm, and then was sold to Onderstepoort Veterinary Institute, where he was a working horse and a research horse. Was bought at Onderstepoort and taken directly to Mashatu to work as a safari horse. So it kind of been a nice, easy working life all his life without overstraining ever. You know, a well looked after horse is a happy animal. So he was that animal until he found himself alone.
Yeah, but when he was found, then after that.
Oh no, he was pretty wild. He never settled down again. He worked for another 2 years as a safari horse, but always unhappily. And very independent and, let's say, a trouble causer in the eyes of the other people and horses around him.
Right.
Was he drawn to zebras in the safari business? I mean, were he saw other zebras after he was returned?
Yeah, he was mull for zebras. He would do anything he could to try and get in amongst them. He preferred zebras to horses, and the humans around him didn't really get it. They didn't appreciate it. They wanted him to always be a horse. And it was, in a way, a pity he was recaptured, but that's the reality he was. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. It's in the book.
You're not going to tell anyone. Pardon? You're not going to tell anyone?
No.
Okay, let's drink.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.